So like I said yesterday, I haven't seen as many movies as I has the last couple of years. Mostly in theaters, and it's mostly been a money issue, but also my job just makes it harder to get to the theater. I haven't seen The Color Purple. I haven't seen The Marvels, or Killers of the Flower Moon, or Wonka, or the new Aquaman, or The Holdovers. But I still managed to see some really great films. In fact, I'm actually surprised at some that didn't make my honorable mentions. So as usual, here are some other really good ones that you should see, but as for honorable mentions, we're keeping them to 8. And we'll start with
Air. Interesting and incredibly well directed, it breezes by at a perfect pace and is one of the best feel-good movies of the year. John Wick Chapter 4. Some of the best action set pieces of the year, with an ending that actually surprised me. Beau is afraid. Like Midsommar and Hereditary, Ari Aster makes a film that has managed to stay in my brain while tons of others I watched afterwards have left. Oppenheimer. Alright, I saw this after Barbie at a very late time, so I was a little tired, yet this still managed to enthrall me. Leave the World Behind. This had some of the best build-up of any movie this year. I was super invested in what was going to happen, and for me, it delivered on the payoff. Plane. This was just awesome. It has the feel of an 80s action movie in the best possible ways. Nimona. Cool style, likable characters, and an interesting world that makes me really happy that this film was given a second chance. And finally, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Speaking as someone who has never played D&D, this was one of the most entertaining movies of the year. Just a very fun movie to watch.
And now onto the actual list. This is my
Top 10 favorite movies of 2023. Number 10.
Hey, remember Drive, that movie that film snobs went crazy for a decade ago? This is what I wanted it to be.
This movie is cool. Every frame of it just oozes cool. And unlike Drive, Michael Fassbender actually has some kind of personality, and I never thought the movie was Frozen. This is definitely upper tier Fincher. Every shot is gorgeous, the music is great, and the audio mixing is phenomenal. There are scenes where the killer has earbuds in, and every time it's from his point of view, the music is loud and clear, but when it's not, it's faint and muffled. That's such a small thing, you don't really need to do it, but it makes the scene much more immersive. The lighting is great. There's an entire fight scene set at night in a barely lit house, but I had no trouble telling who was who and what was going on in every moment.
And if you haven't seen the movie, fair warning, there are no likable characters.
Every single person is a bad guy. The only reason Fassbender is the best is that he kills someone who literally did nothing wrong in a way to make it look like an accident so their kids can get some insurance money. That's his good deed. And Fassbender is terrifying in this. Plus, it also has some of the best product placement I've ever seen, using a lot of brands to complete his mission. I didn't find out until after I saw this that it was the same writer as Seven, my favorite Fincher movie, and while not as well paced as that film, I do wish it gave more screen time to his home life to better understand his motivation. It is a great action thriller that takes a lot of risk, and while it won't be for everyone, I think it paid off.
I don't wanna know.
Number 9.
What is it you love most about Gracie?
She always knows what she wants.
She's unapologetic.
This movie was straight up uncomfortable, but in a good way. If you haven't heard what the movie's about, it's pretty much just the Mary Kay Letourneau story with different names. There are straight up lines that Julianne Moore says in this movie that I've heard Letourneau say in interviews. So it does have a lot to do with child grooming, pedophilia, and trauma, but still manages to have a sense of humor. Julianne Moore is absolutely terrifying in this. Even though I know the story this is based on, I thought she was gonna start killing people. Every time someone does something to annoy her or piss her off, I kept thinking she would scream or abuse them in some way. But that's not how she gets what she wants. Like the asshole she's based on, she gets what she wants through manipulation. Not just on Joe, but her kids. Convincing her daughter to get another dress by body shaming her, but in that condescending way where it seems like she's giving a compliment. Or when she gets Joe, the boy she molested, to console her after the woman who already ordered one of her cakes cancels after she already made it.
Like I said, it has a sense of humor.
I really love how Charles Melton portrayed Joe. He's very skittish and awkward. I probably related a lot to Joe because the actor playing him is only a couple years older than me, so it made me think how I would feel if I had kids graduating high school right now. All this gets even creepier when you remember a lot of this actually happened, but I love a lot of the subtlety in this. The stuff you wouldn't notice unless you're really paying attention, like that Joe doesn't connect to the other adults, to him never having done pot before, not knowing much about sex because he had to grow up too fast. Natalie Portman's great too, and don't be fooled, her character isn't an angel either. This movie has some things to say about method acting, and despite being 2 hours and about a very heavy subject matter, it still manages to be a very entertaining movie. I do think the blaring piano music sprinkled throughout could get a little excessive, and while I know it's the point, it does leave you with a lot of questions. It's a very good movie that, while it may be a bit hard to watch for some, is a very good fictionalized version of this story. Number 8.
I just need to know that you're safe when I'm away. All right.
5 years ago, the movie Searching came out, a movie I already liked a lot, but I've grown to like even more as time goes by. It may be in my top 10 of 2018 now, at least the top 15. It was creative, had a good mystery, and a lot of heart. Missing a sort of sequel has pretty much the same positives. It has a lot of the same stuff I loved, but it doesn't feel like they're just doing the same movie, just switching the races. There are a lot of differences, mostly the main character. David was a pretty level-headed guy who genuinely loved his daughter and thought she was happy. In this movie, June is a brat. She practically ostracizes her mom at the beginning, but that just makes her development more satisfying. David also was an adult with money, had a lot of resources to work with in the search that only covers his hometown. June has limited money, she's only 18, and has to search in a totally different country. But she's smart, knowing who to call, what apps to use, when to use them all, and try to piece all the puzzle pieces together on what happened to her mom. And it's helped by a fantastic performance from Storm Reed.
This kid is going places.
Now, there are some parts that stretch the suspension of disbelief, but I was constantly guessing what happened and what would happen, and I didn't guess any of it. And it's not cheap, it does give you plenty of clues. Hell, it technically reveals a big twist early on if you're paying close attention enough. And when that twist was revealed, I gasped. Like Searching, there is an emotional heart to it. The stuff between June and her mom is legit sweet, and I want June to find her, especially when they left on such a bitter note. There's even a cute relationship with a Colombian gig worker, and it's just creative. There is so much creativity in the editing and how they use all these different apps to solve the mystery. They tell the story from Ring cameras to TikTok to Apple Watches. It's fun, and at almost 2 hours long, it breezes by. And I hope we don't have to wait 5 more years for another one. Number 7.
So, this movie made me realize that one of my favorite genres is secluded house alien invasion.
This movie certainly has the same thrills of movies like Nope and Slumber Party Alien Abduction, but has its own feel. First of all, it does a lot of garlanding. Garlanding is the term I have given to what director Alex Garland does in his films, where when we get to the third act, the movie stops even trying to have a coherent plot, and just dissolves into a series of surreal images and droning music. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, usually, but it really does work here. It starts out as a typical alien home invasion story, and it's a great one. I did all the things I was supposed to. My heart was racing, I screamed, oh shit, I curled up on my chair, it's great.
But then something happens to the alien, and the movie goes in a direction I did not expect.
I had no idea how this movie would end. It could have gone pretty much any way and I would have accepted it. This is a very creative film. First off, there's no dialogue. Like, none. There's screams, grunts, but there's only like 2 lines the whole film. I honestly spent the first half hour saying, is someone gonna say something? And it works, mostly because Caitlin Denver, who you may remember from Booksmart, is fantastic.
But what really surprised me is how much I loved the aliens.
This isn't like a lot of films where they try to keep them hidden. No, you see these things a lot. And I think this is like the only alien invasion movie that tries to give the aliens different personalities. Like, one of them is nonchalant and barely acknowledges her. One seems like they're trying to make up for their small size by being really aggressive. One, I swear, nearly starts crying when his buddies leave, and they mess with her a lot. It's nice to see filmmakers try to personify the aliens a bit. And for a low-budget movie, they look pretty good. Some didn't like the design, saying they were too cliche, but personally, I like them. There's a reason it's a cliche. It's a creepy design. When the movie was over, I immediately went on YouTube to look up other people's videos because I was interested in hearing their takes on the themes and endings. This is definitely a modern alien classic that certainly won't be for everyone. Even I thought it could be a little self-indulgent at times, but it certainly would make a good triple feature with Signs and Incident in Lake County.
Catch me or I go Houdini. I'm just a kid, where I see love, she sees a friend.
Number 6.
If I recall, the last movie I saw in a theater before I turned 20 was Spielberg's Lincoln, so I guess it makes sense that the last film I saw in a theater before I turned 30 was also by one of my favorite directors.
We now have confirmation of as many as 700 airplanes having crashed without warning, without issuing distress calls, amid fears and increasing speculation there may have been a coordinated cyber attack on the plane's flight management system.
I've heard this before.
TSA has yet.
I liked Old, I liked Glass, but this is M. Night's best movie since Split. In fact, a lot of the time, I was reminded of when I saw Split and the agonizing suspense I was in. The premise is so simple, but leads to so much. A family are invaded by a group who tell them that they have to kill one of their own, or else the world will end. And it does a good job in having not just the characters, but the audience wonder if these 4 are just crazy, or if it's true. Because every time something happens that seems to confirm their theory, they come up with a rational explanation. By the end, it does give a clear answer, but for a majority of the runtime, I was wondering who was right. This also, some of the best acting of the year. Dave Bautista not only gives the best performance I've ever seen from him, but probably the best performance I've ever seen from a former wrestler. He is so charming and likable, you want to believe him, even when the stuff he's saying sounds so far-fetched. Rupert Grint and Nikia Muka-Bird are also excellent, and well, Abby Quinn started a little forced with her comedy. She got better as the movie progressed.
But what surprised me most was how much I loved the main family.
The 2 dads, Eric and Andrew, are charming, cute, and actually feel like a genuine couple. And they don't just feel like stereotypes, they both have full and kind of conflicting personalities. One is more nihilistic and realist, while one is more optimistic. But despite that, you can see why they fell for each other. And they both clearly love their daughter, Wen, who also is great performance from a young actress. She feels like a real kid. She's obviously scared, but still resourceful and clever. I love this family and wanted them to make it out. I haven't read the book, and I know it differs wildly with the ending. It does have a few times where you have to suspend your disbelief a bit far. Like, I'm pretty sure this movie doesn't know how the news works, and I could see some people finding it repetitive, but this is an excellent thriller that for me was the perfect length, and I think ranks up there with some other great home invasion movies like Panic Room and Hush.
No way was I last night. I'm just a kid, where I see love, she sees a friend.
Number 5.
I'm so glad this movie got its money.
This is just really nice. Similar to Luca, it's just a really nice movie to watch. It may not do too much that's new, but I just loved watching it. Like most, I really didn't know what to expect. I thought the trailers were cute, but I didn't really know what it was about. I thought it was going to be something similar to Zootopia. Turns out, it's a romantic comedy. I mean, there's other things too. It has themes of immigration and prejudice, but it's mostly a film about these two developing a romance.
And I loved it.
There are very few films that really get me in the feels when it comes to romance. Other mediums have an easier time, but movies have around 2 hours to make me care, which is really hard. But with this, I was on board with these two. Yeah, it's a dynamic we've seen before. The tough, hot-headed woman and the shy, awkward man. But the voice acting, the music, the pacing, I just had a huge smile every time they were on screen together. And it feels genuine. They start out just sorta hanging out, and it grows. They have disagreements, but they feel like actual arguments that people would have. Both of them help each other find out what they want. It's a relationship that feels like both are equals. And the conflicts don't feel forced. Everything flows like, well, water. Needless to say, the animation is great. I like this world. I've heard some say the city feels unsafe and even hostile for the fire people, and I'm like, yeah. That's the point. It's a commentary on immigration. I love the music, the themes, and all of the side characters. Well, except maybe Claude, but he's barely in the movie. And it does have a fake out at the end that was a bit contrived. Didn't bother me too much though, but I know it will for some others. Honestly, I'd love to see these characters again. As much as I liked movies like Encanto, Moana, Soul, this is the first Disney animated film since Zootopia where I want to see more.
I'm really glad this movie went from being declared a flop to actually being a sleeper hit, and it's well worth seeing if you haven't.
I'm just a kid, where I see love, she sees a friend. What will it take?
Number 4.
So if anyone out there wants to call me a misogynist for having 2 female-directed movies as my worst movies of the year, this one's for you.
It's called 2 Minutes in the Closet. What's that? Well, we all get a number, and then somebody will call out, like, number 6. And then those 2 will go into the closet and,
This movie just sorta came out of nowhere for me. I can't say I had too much interest in seeing it. I never read the book, nor did I see The Edge of 17, which was this director's last movie. But this was one of the most likable and charming movies I saw in 2023. And extremely relatable, despite the main character and me having pretty much nothing in common. Her being a straight girl living in 1970, a lot of her struggles are stuff I have very little experience with, like periods, crushes on boys, and having a crisis of faith. But Kelly Fremont Craig manages to write it and direct it in a way that makes it relatable, even if you don't live that experience. I didn't have periods, but we all went through puberty and were afraid we were falling behind on how fast our peers were growing up. We didn't know how to have a crush on someone who wasn't the most popular person, but we all have liked something and felt embarrassed by it. And we all haven't had to choose what religion to follow, but we've all wanted to believe in some plan to help us when times are tough. The acting is great, with what I hope is a star-making performance from Abby Ryder Forston, who you may remember as Cassie from the first 2 Ant-Man movies. She is so good, and I really loved Rachel McAdams as her mom, who has her own little arc going throughout the movie as well. The music is great, the production design is fantastic, and the pacing is perfect, managing to breeze by and not feel too long. It covers all the little moments of growing up, the happy moments, the sad moments, and of course, the embarrassing moments. I may have cringed a few times remembering some dumb moments from my own childhood, which again, I didn't think I relate to as much as I did.
Never has a movie so accurately portrayed family dinner arguments over something political.
This is certainly one of the most likable movies of the year, and if you haven't seen it, give it a shot. I think there's something in here for everyone.
You got a fast car. Is it fast enough so we can fly away? Still gotta make a decision. Leave tonight or live and die this way. I'm just a kid, where I see love, she sees a friend. What will it take?
Number 3.
We paid her to help us get in and get out. You'd think that'd mean, oh, I'm gonna help you do it in a way that no one knows it's happening. But no, what she means is I'm gonna shoot people, threaten people's lives.
I'm still surprised I love this and the second movie as much as I did. Again, I liked the first movie, but I didn't fall in love with it like everyone else did. It was actually my least favorite of the 4 big comic book movies that came out that year. Volume 2 blew me away with how much I loved it, and this one I think is almost as good. Besides a few pacing issues and the fact that Will Poulter's character was almost completely useless, I loved everything about this movie. The crew is just insanely likable, and I love that they all get equal amounts to do. With a lot of these superhero movies that juggle a lot of characters, one character will get much more focus.
I'm looking at you, X-Men movies.
But here, they all get arcs, they all get laughs, they all get an equal amount of time. Seeing Peter deal with grief, Gamora learn to trust this crew that she technically barely knows, Nebula becoming part of the team, and I adored every second of Rocket's backstory. It was sad, funny, and extremely sweet. I almost cried by the end of it. I also love how it gives arcs to minor characters like Kranglin and Cosmo, who is a very, very good dog. But the character who surprised me the most was the villain, for how much I despised him. It has been a long time since I've wanted to reach into a movie and punch the bad guy because I hated him so much. I think the last time that happened was Unsane. Every time he was on screen, I would clench my fist just hoping I could somehow last action hero my way in the movie to inflict pain on this guy. Everything else is great. The action, the production design, the music. It's rare we get a trilogy of films in which the first one is the weakest, but this and Volume 2 are some of the best comic book movies of the past decade, some of the best summer movies of the past decade, and 2 of the best MCU movies ever made.
I'm too fresh, I know. Tell him I'm next. Tell him you find a little something too fresh, I know. I'm just kidding. Where I see love, she sees a friend.
Number 2.
There's an elite society with all the best spider people in it?
Okay, so there's this lady, Jess Drew. She rides a motorcycle. Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much from her.
Oh yeah, I've learned a lot of stuff too.
What more can I say about this? Like seriously, what else? Everyone has sung this movie's praises. It's so good that I'm actually kind of mad at it. The animation is fantastic, the action is thrilling, the characters are deep and complex without overbearing the story in so much drama that it gets heavy-handed or boring. I love all the connections between the characters, the connection between Miles and his parents, the parents with each other, Miles and Gwen with her dad. They all manage to have chemistry and have nice moments together, and even when they fight, it doesn't feel forced. The story is interesting and has so many Easter eggs and twists and turns, but it never gets confusing. It's one of the closest examples of a perfect movie I can think of. Like if I try to nitpick some very minor things, like sometimes the style got distracting and would take me out of the movie, and there were a few cuts that could have been made, but for the most part, it's great, and you all know it's great. I can't really talk about it without just using all the cliche terms you would use to describe a great movie. So you know what? That's all. Across the Spider-Verse is awesome, and you know it's awesome. Moving on.
Don't you know about me? I could dance, I could dance, I could dance, dance tonight. My name's Kate, and so am I. Put that merry head in mine.
Number 1. As an action movie, this is about as close to perfect as you can get. I honestly don't know how you can top it, but you know what? I'd love to see them try. Mission Impossible Fallout is an action masterpiece.
They did it. They fucking did it.
The buyer is Otto von Bork, Swiss national. He's connecting to Venice, departing in 30 minutes on flight 1031.
Reggie, get me on that flight to Venice. Yep, flight 1031 to Venice.
I don't get it. I don't understand how the 7th movie in an action series that's been going on for almost 30 years, starring a man in his 60s, has managed to be the best in this franchise. Better than the last film that I dubbed one of the best action movies ever made. Every action scene in this film is great. More than one of them I would put on a list of some of the best action scenes I have ever seen. The best being the climax on the train that is my pick for the best action scene of the decade so far. So yeah, the action is great, but this gets my number 1 specifically because it did something in the year it came out.
It never stops moving.
There were a lot of really long movies this year. I think how we can blame the first Avatar for that 3D craze, we can blame Avatar 2 for the movies being nearly 3 hours long. I don't know if it was to give people their money's worth, but they were just so long this year. And this movie was too. It's over 2.5 hours, but I was never bored because it was always moving. It never drags. There's always something keeping them going, even if it has to slow down. Several of my other favorites this year were long too. Guardians and Spider-Verse were both over 2.5 hours. And there were parts they could be boring. This one, despite being even longer, not once. I love the characters, the story was intriguing, it looked amazing, the bad guys are fun to hate, there's twists and turns, and by the end I couldn't wait for part 2. It has all the great cliches from the series, but it doesn't feel tired. I thought to myself, is this really my favorite of the year? You can argue that the last few movies are better written, have stronger characters, and you're probably right, but this just gave me everything I wanted from a theatrical experience. I even saw it in the small theater in my old hometown where I would see most movies growing up, so it kind of had a nostalgic feel. I said it with Fallout and I'll say it here. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is an action masterpiece.
So there you go, guys. I know a lot of people want to skip 2024 and go right to 2025 with all the things that are coming out that year, but I remember a decade ago people saying that about 2014, and that turned out to be a great movie year. I really hope that next year is great. And like I said, I probably won't put out much in the first half of the year, but I'll try my best. So if you watch them, I'll see you tomorrow for my final weigh-in of the year, and if not, I'll see y'all in 2024. Bye.